still use Crocodile's Tooth on T4.
The Patient's First Healthcare Plan is improving access to healthcare for you and your family, delivering the right care at the right time. It's about patients and putting them first across Saskatchewan.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea and a drive to bring it to life. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one.
Yo, 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 what's going on, guys? Yo, 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 what's going on, guys? Hello and welcome to my first ever Succession Sage PvP guide. Now fellas, this has been something that people have been asking me for a very, very long time, and I put a lot of time and work into this video. And with that being said, it's also going to be a relatively long video. So if there's something that you would like to learn about specifically, please do refer to the timestamps in the description below. That way you can skip ahead in the video and you won't have to watch through the entire thing. And with that being said, guys, let's talk a little bit about the state of Suck Sage in small scale, medium scale, and large scale before we get kicked off with the video. Alrighty guys, very briefly, the state of Suck Sage for small scale is and always will be poor. This is just simply not a class that you would like to play for very small focused combat. So that is going to be 1v1s, 2v2, 3v3, stuff like that. It is relatively poor because this class simply does not function good against classes that can run you down in small focused combat. For medium scale, however, such as RBF and Guild Leagues, the class is very, very good. Sage shines a lot more the more players that there are and the more chaos that is happening around the battlefield. And of course, for large scale, it is extremely good. I would say for T1, T2, and T3, Suck Sage is very, very good. T3 being an absolutely disgusting cap and the best cap for Suck Sage. And Cap Siege, it is also very, very good, with Balanos being its second best cap in the entire game. For T4, Suck Sage does sadly fall off a little bit due to the nature of the specialty attack evasion rate cap, and as well as uncapped, it does fall off a little bit because of the nature of the current ranged meta and other classes just being better at what Suck Sage wants to do. So that's the current state of Suck Sage in our meta right now, guys. Really excellent for capped content. Not too great for T4, but it's still good. Uncapped is a little 50-50 depending on who you're fighting, and versus better players, Suck Sage does fall off a little bit. Okay guys, very briefly, I would like to go over the skills that you should have locked on the Suck Sage. Now, there's really not very many, so we're just going to run through it really fast. First skill, of course, is going to be Evasion. Evasion is a complete meme. You basically lock this on 99% of classes. Absolute Taurus Thorn. This is also a very, very big meme ability. Now, it has an extremely fat slaw on it, being the minus 50% movement speed, but the keybind is very, very conflicting with so many other abilities, and it is completely unprotected. So, if you ever wanted to meme around or mess around with it in AOS or 1v1s, you could, but to be honest, again, with the keybind being RMB, which is the same thing that you use for Form Shift and Void Gateways, I would not recommend it. This is a permanent lock for me, and that's just how it's going to be. The next ability that is relatively optional is going to be your class buff, aka your E buff. Now, E is another conflicting keybind for the most part because it conflicts with the Taurus Mark keybind of down E. So you can lock this if you want, and you can add it to your hotbar if that is your preference. I have personally just gotten used to using the ability by pressing E, and so that's what I like to do. And then finally, guys, another optional ability that we can lock is going to be Absolute Gravity Rift. Absolute Gravity Rift has another conflicting keybind, being the E button. So again, there are times where you may accidentally use a Taurus Mark instead, or you may accidentally use your E buff. If you're comfortable with it, you don't have to lock it. But if you do lock it, you'll have to add it to your hotbar, so you can use it from your hotbar. And essentially, those are the only locked abilities that you have to worry about, guys. Those are really the only ones that you need to worry about. Everything else, you don't really have to lock, or there is no point to lock. Okay guys, now I want to talk about the skills that you should and can have on your hotbar. Now, they're very simple. Sage doesn't really have a lot of abilities to begin with. So the first and the mandatory ability that you need on your hotbar is going to be reset. Now, this is a fundamental and quintessential aspect of Sage's kit. This ability has no keybind, so this has to be put on your hotbar if you want to use it, and you are going to be using this ability a lot. It is very important. The next ability that I personally have in my hotbar, and this is completely optional guys, is going to be a Tor's Illusion. Now, I don't use a Tor's Illusion for my hotbar, I just simply have it here so I can track the cooldown instead of adding it to a skill cooldown slot. So this is purely optional, you don't have to put it here. The next ability that I have on the hotbar guys that is going to actually be mandatory again is going to be Void Eruption. Just like I spoke about with the bombs, the Void Eruption is mandatory to have on your hotbar because it has no keybind. It has a very important usage with taking your weapons out without left clicking, and it links into Rift Chain very good. So because of the fact that this has no keybind, this has to go. Okay guys, very briefly, I would like to go over the skills that you should have locked on the Suck Sage. Now, there's really not very many, so we're just going to run through it really fast. First skill, of course, is going to be Evasion. Evasion is a complete meme. You basically lock this on 99% of classes. Absolute Taurus Thorn. This is also a very big meme ability. Now, it has an extremely fat slaw on it, being the minus 50% movement speed, but the keybind is very conflicting with so many other abilities, and it is completely unprotected. So, if you ever wanted to meme around or mess around with it in AOS or 1v1s, you could. But to be honest, again, with the keybind being RMB, which is the same thing that you use for Form Shift and Void Gateways, I would not recommend it. This is a permanent lock for me, and that's just how it's going to be. The next ability that is relatively optional is going to be your class buff, aka your E buff. Now, E is another conflicting keybind for the most part because it conflicts with the Tor's Mark keybind of down E. So you can lock this if you want, and you can add it to your hotbar if that is your preference. I have personally just gotten used to using the ability by pressing E, and so that's what I like to do. And then finally guys, another optional ability that we can lock is going to be Absolute Gravity Rift. Absolute Gravity Rift has another conflicting keybind, being the E button. So again, there are times where you may accidentally use a Taurus Mark instead, or you may accidentally use your E buff. If you're comfortable with it, you don't have to lock it, but if you do lock it, you'll have to add it to your hotbar, so you can use it from your hotbar. And essentially, those are the only locked abilities that you have to worry about, guys. Those are really the only ones that you need to worry about. Everything else, you don't really have to lock, or there is no point to lock. Okay guys, now I want to talk about the skills that you should and can have on your hotbar. Now, they're very simple. Sage doesn't really have a lot of abilities to begin with. So, the first and the mandatory ability that you need on your hotbar is going to be reset. Now, this is a fundamental and quintessential aspect of Sage's kit. This ability has no keybind, so this has to be put on your hotbar if you want to use it, and you are going to be using this ability a lot. It is very important. The next ability that I personally have in my hotbar, and this is completely optional guys, is going to be a Tor's Illusion. Now, I don't use a Tor's Illusion for my hotbar, I just simply have it here so I can track the cooldown instead of adding it to a skill cooldown slot. So this is purely optional, you don't have to put it here. The next ability that I have on the hotbar guys that is going to actually be mandatory again is going to be Void Eruption. Just like I spoke about with the bombs, the Void Eruption is mandatory to have on your hotbar because it has no keybind. It has a very important usage with taking your weapons out without left clicking, and it links into Rift Chain very good. So because of the fact that this has no keybind, this has to go into your hotbar slot. Another optional ability that we have guys is going to be Gravity Rift. So Gravity Rift, personally I used to have it locked for a very long time. I can't decide which one I like, but essentially if you have this ability locked because it has a conflicting bind with your E buff, if you lock it, you have to drag it onto your hotbar. Otherwise, if you're comfy and you don't care, you don't have to lock this at all, and you can just use the normal keybind of Shift E. The next ability, guys, that is mandatory if you want to use it, which I personally do not, is going to be Illusion Compression. I really don't like this ability too much because I don't think it's worth the opportunity cost of using versus other abilities that have CC and damage. However, if you would like to use this ability, then this must be dragged onto your hotbar, because if you use Shift Q, which is the original keybind, you are going to use the Magnus instead. And that's just how it is. So if you want to use the vacuum, you have to put it onto your hotbar. Finally, guys, the last ability that we have is going to be your E-buff, aka Prime Optimization. Now, Prime Optimization, you don't actually need this on your hotbar. This is purely optional. If you feel like you're one of those people that has a good chance of fat fingering your abilities, then you can just lock this, drag it onto your hotbar like so, and you can just activate the ability from your hotbar. The reason why I don't do this is because it takes up a couple hotbar slots. So normally these 2 slots would be allocated for my Whale Tendon Potion and my Miraculous Teotguk. But if you want to do that, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can lock it and drag it to the hotbar. The final button that is completely optional and up to you is Rage Transfer. I personally like to lock Rage Transfer and drag it onto my hotbar, so that way there's absolutely no chance of me using this ability in the event that I try to use a Tor's Illusion and I fat finger or it's on cooldown and I use the Rage Transfer in the middle of a fight. It'll be really, really bad and awkward for that to happen. So I like to just lock it, put on my hotbar, and whenever I need to feed, I just hit 0 and boom, good to go. Next up, guys, we're going to talk very briefly about your bombs and which ones you should be using for PvP. So first off, we have a Tor's Palm and a Tor's Illusion. A Tor's Palm is more for PvE. However, if you prefer more sustain and large scale PvP, you can actually use this, and on structures, the healing is actually quite good, being 90 HP per hit at a ×8 attack damage. So this is essentially like a mini Gravity Rift. It's really, really cool, fast burst healing. But what I like to prefer using is the Tor's Illusion. Now, Tor's Illusion is a really, really nice stun. It's a very, very fast ability, so it's a very reactive CC that you can just whip out. It's also pretty good filler damage, and this is essentially the bomb of choice for 95% of PvP, unless you want more sustain from Palm. Second bomb, guys, we have Energized Thorn versus Piercing Thorn. Energized Thorn is kind of a meme. It's really only for PvE purposes, especially one-shot spots like Elvia, where if you're looting a pack, you can kind of use Energized Thorn while you're looting, and it has a little bit of range to it. Otherwise, for 99% of PvP, you're always going to be using Piercing Thorn. Piercing Thorn is super good. It has very respectable damage at 1358 × 6, 50% critical hit rate, 10% accuracy rate, and it is also a ranged knockdown. It's a ranged knockdown on a very respectable cooldown of 11 seconds. So in the event that you need an auxiliary CC, a little backup CC or re-CC, you can always use this button. Very, very good. Just be careful about using it in large scale because it is unprotected. So probably won't see too much usage of this in pure large scale. However, in AOS, it is very, very handy. And in isolated situations during large scale, it is very good as a re-CC backup. And finally, guys, the third bomb, we have Void Blast and Void Eruption. Now, Void Blast, you can essentially forget that this even exists, is a very, very mediocre ability that doesn't really do good damage. Void Eruption, in my opinion, is absolutely mandatory, and this is another ability that you have to hotbar. And the reason why this is mandatory is because this is the main way that you pull your weapons out. So if you respawn on base, or if you get off your horse, or anything like that, instead of just pressing left click to take your weapon out, which takes some time and is clunky, the preferred method is to just take your weapon out with Void Eruption, which immediately puts you into super armor, and you can instantly go into Rift Chain after using it. So this ability is your best friend. It does a decent little chunk of damage as well. Very, very fast super armor, and it pulls your weapons out immediately. So always use Void Eruption as your third rebomb. Alrighty, fellas, so next up I want to talk very briefly about the Sucksage BSR usage, which of course is going to be the BSR of a Tor's Mark. Now, This BSR in particular is very, very peculiar. I'm not really too sure how I feel about it these days. I've had a lot of time to experiment with it, and my general conclusion is that it is very 50-50. Typically speaking, you want to just be feeding your BSR to a class that actually has a good 100%. So again, the Zerkers, the Valkyrie, the Megu, even the Wusa, stuff like that, they will make way better usage of BSR. Their BSR is monumentally better. It's got better CCs on it. But in the event that you do use your BSR, which there are a couple applications that you can get good usage out of it, the BSR is very, very weird for a couple of reasons. So let me just play the demo for you guys so you can see how the ability actually looks without me wasting my BSR. So this is what it looks like right here. You call down what looks like a spatial collapse, and then it comes down with another spatial collapse kind of like ability right there. But the weird thing about this ability is that before the first quote-unquote spatial collapse even hits, there is already a CC check. So there's an initial bound check, and then there's another bound check. So this CC actually, or this ability actually has a multi-CC check. There's a bound, and then there's another bound, which is actually quite rare. There's not like a whole lot of multi-CC check abilities like that. And this makes it very, very good versus classes that are planning to just run you down and grab you. I can't tell you the amount of times where I've been playing AOS, for example, and if there's like a Zerker that's chasing me or a Valkyrie, I will literally look directly down at the floor and use the BSR directly near my feet, and you will basically CC them through the grab. Like, it's super awkward, it's really clunky. The other important thing to note about this BSR is that it has a very, very hard fixed range limit. Now, I'll try to record multiple takes of this so you guys can see what I mean by the range, but it has a very specific range. So for example, if I'm too far out, the ability will basically do nothing. So if I'm over here, even though my indicator is red, I don't know if you can really see that, but even though my indicator is red, it's not going to hit, it'll just fizzle out. So this is what the ability actually looks like. I'll use it normally this time, and then I'll show you a fizzle out version. So we use the ability, it's going to be down E. And then you notice how the bound happened before the ability actually came out. I'll try and like replay that, or if you guys want on YouTube, you can replay it. But the actual CC, the bound, happens before the actual animation takes place. It's very, very weird. So in a lot of situations, even if you're quote-unquote out of range, and I'll try and show it again here in a second. So like I was saying, even if you're quote-unquote out of range like this, which this should be classified as out of range, you still get the bound, but you can see there's no ability right there. And if you guys want, you can replay that on YouTube. It took me, honestly, more than I'd like to admit to actually get that to happen. I don't know why. It's like so much easier on BA. But basically, you can still out of range somebody and get like a random bound like that. And it's not very practical. And as you can see, the ability just fizzles out, which kind of sucks. But that's basically what happens when you use it from out of range. So I would say the range is about like right here between these NPCs. Like if you go any further than this, you're gonna have a pretty high chance of it just fizzling out and doing literally nothing. And that happens a lot. Like a lot. So gotta be very, very wary on when you actually use the BSR. Generally speaking, it's better to just absorb the BSR if you have nobody to feed, or if, like, you know, things are moving around a lot and you don't have time to feed a target. It's usually just better to absorb it for the extra big chunk of attack speed. That's basically just like having Shy Buffs, the 25% attack speed and the 30 AP in the event that you are doing uncapped. It's quite nice. Okay fellas, so the next step that I would like to talk about is going to be the add-ons that I use for capped and uncapped content. Now, I will have a link down below in the description to my Discord where I have these add-ons posted, and then I will also have a link in the description for my Garmoth where I have my full add-on set up, my crystals, etc, etc. So if you want to see the online version, I'll have a link below for that. But for now, let's take a look at the capped add-ons that we have, and I'll briefly explain why I have the add-ons that I do. So the first add-on and ability that we're going to have is going to be Void Gateways, having the accuracy rate plus 5% and the attack speed plus 10%. So the reason why we have accuracy rate plus 5% on here is because even though Sage does have a big chunk of accuracy from Spatial Fissure, if we look at, for example, a T4 node like Ivory Wasteland, you'll notice that the accuracy rate limit is actually uncapped. So we really want as much accuracy as we can possibly get, Not only that, in the event that you do not pre-buff with your Shift L and B, which we'll talk about a little bit later, having that extra 5% accuracy rate in a pinch just means that you have that much more hit rate versus targets. And on capped content, that's a really, really big deal because again, let's look at a T3 where the accuracy rate limit is 20%. Again, if you Shift L and B, you'll hit that no problem, but sometimes you don't always have time in a very hectic fight. Okay, so now moving on to the uncapped add-ons. Okay guys, here on the screen I'll have my capped crystal loadouts showing for you guys. Now, these are the loadouts that I use for T1, T2 respectively, and then T3 and T4 respectively. Now, I'm not going to get into very fine detail on why I use these specific crystals or this loadout. If you want very, very fine detail and you want to know exactly why I use the things that I do, please definitely go check out my Cap Node War Guide video in which I explain in depth why I use the crystals that I do. And then here guys, we have my uncapped crystal page. Now, this page is mostly to bolster your evasion as much as possible with a little bit of damage sprinkled in via the Red Battlefield Vipers and the Glorious Alucas. Okay guys, jumping into the artifact and lightstone setup that I use for capped and uncapped content. Again, if you guys want a lot of detail, please go check out my capped Node War Guide video where I talk a lot about what you want to use for capped content specifically and why it's good. Otherwise, right now for capped content, I always use maximum HP artifacts, so 2 max HP artifacts, or Kabuas if you have 2 times Kabuas, and the Lightstone combination. That I use is always going to be Crocodile's Tooth. Crocodile's Tooth is the highest damage Lightstone setup that you can possibly get for capped content because it features the most percentage base modifiers. So always want to be running Crocodile's Tooth no matter what. Stomping is a very good cheap alternative as well as target openings, but they do not give as much damage as Crocodile's Tooth. Now for uncapped guys, this is what my loadout will be looking like. So for uncapped content, I will be running double all evasion artifacts, and my Lightstone combination setup is always going to be Untouchable. Untouchable is essentially the... Oh. Okay guys, now we're going to talk about what Now, for uncapped guys, this is what my loadout will... Okay guys. Now, for uncapped guys, uncapped content, I will be running looking like. So, for uncapped content, I will be running double all evasion artifacts, and my Lightstone combination setup is always going to be Untouchable. Untouchable is essentially the best evasion loadout that you can get for EVA classes. Suck Sage needs to be EVA for uncapped, so this setup is absolutely perfect. Untouchable is also best in slot for T4s because it gives you not only HP, but it also gives you special attack evasion rate, which is extremely powerful on T4 with being uncapped. Now, if you don't have this and you want to go full damage, you can still use Crocodile's Tooth on T4 if you want, but I do think that the extra tankiness value from Untouchable is a little bit superior. So of course you'd want to have Untouchable in max HP artifacts or Kabuas, and you are basically good to go. Those are the two setups that I use for 99% of content. Okay guys, now we're going to talk about what pre-buffs you have available to you as a Succession Sage. And to be honest, most of the pre-buffs are very, very simple. There are essentially only 3 pre-buffs that you have in the kit for Succession. So the first one is going to be Spatial Fissure, which is a 18% accuracy rate, all accuracy rate by the way, for 10 seconds as soon as you use the skill. So as you notice here, Shift LMB, 18% accuracy. Right. Now this ability is very, very good for capped and uncapped content, because if you take a note of the T3 caps, for example, so if we go to the Northern Plane of Serendia, which is a T3 node, you can see that the total accuracy rate limit is going to be 20%. Right now we have a natural 12%, that's just the base accuracy rate that you get for playing Sage, plus the 5% from the guild skill bonus. But if we actually use the Shift LMB and we go back to the map, now you can see we're actually over that accuracy rate limit, which is really, really nice. Doesn't do anything by being over the rate limit, but if you do get debuffed, you'll have a little bit of surplus to not get lowered below that that capped amount. So very, very helpful. It's going to make you do more damage on capped content because you have a higher chance to hit people, generally speaking. Because everybody has a base amount of evasion. Most targets are going to be hitting the evasion limit, etc., etc. So more accuracy rate limit. Basically, you can interpret that as doing more damage. On uncapped, it is extremely important because you have to deal with a lot of heavy evasion targets, especially in Guild Leagues or RBF. So this ability is really, really good. You basically always want to be using this, even passively. You know, if you have some downtime, you're getting shy buffs, you're about to take a push, just use the ability. By the time you finish using the ability, it's only on a 5-second cooldown, but after the animation finishes, it's basically on a 4-second cooldown. So it's basically always available. There's no reason why you shouldn't have this accuracy buff like 24/7. The next ability that we're going to talk about, guys, is going to be Illusion Barrier. which is actually just your Q block. That's the name of the Q block. And essentially, the Q block gives you 20 DP for 20 seconds as soon as you click the button. So again, you're just walking around, you're about to take a fight on uncapped. Boom, Q buff, good to go for the next 20 seconds, give or take. So on RBF, you know, guild leagues, open world, uncapped, node wars, etc., there's no reason why you shouldn't be using this. It is literally just 20 free DP, which is a pretty good chunk, to be honest with you. So again, just press Q, that's it. Pretty easy. The final pre-buff that we have, guys, is going to be the Illusion Expansion, which is Shift F. So Illusion Expansion is going to give you 20 all AP for 10 seconds as soon as you press the button, which is really, really nice. So again, Shift F, and you have the ability. Really, really good stuff to use. You don't really need to do this on capped content, again, because most people are going to be hitting the AP caps. But for uncapped, you absolutely want to be pre-buffing with Illusion Expansion whenever you can. And if you can't for whatever reason, then you definitely want to be pre-buffing with Illusion Barrier. Those are going to be very, very mandatory. So to recap, guys, we have 3 pre-buffs. We have the Spatial Fissure, which is 18% accuracy rate. We have our Q block, which is going to be 20 DP. And then we have Shift F, Illusion Expansion, which is going to be 28.
The current ads are over.
AP. So all those combined capped content, again, because most people are going to be hitting the AP caps, but for uncapped, you absolutely want to be pre-buffing with Illusion Expansion whenever you can, and if you can't for whatever reason, then you definitely want to be pre-buffing with Illusion Barrier. Those are going to be very, very mandatory. So to recap, guys, we have 3 pre-buffs. We have the Spatial Fissure, which is 18% accuracy rate. We have our Q block, which is going to be 20 DP. And then we have Shift F, Illusion Expansion, which is going to be 20 AP. So, all those combined, it's a pretty good amount of damage and survivability. Really no reason to not use it. They're super, super easy. If you want, you can literally just do Shift L and B, Shift F, Q. You can do something like that. And essentially before like an AOS match, before a Guild League fight, you just want to rotate between these three abilities whenever you possibly can. The cooldown is so low on all these abilities that there's no reason to not use them. I mean, Q block has no cooldown, so, or 1 second cooldown, so basically nothing. And, you know, the fissure is essentially only 4 seconds, and then expansion is only a 7-second cooldown. So, those are the pre-buffs, guys. Use them all the time. They're super, super easy to follow up on. They're super easy to use. And like I said, capped content, Shift L and B. Uncapped, use all three. Okay, next up, fellas, I would like to talk a little bit about Sage's neutral game and how you can build up your reset. Now, when I say neutral game essentially is a state during BDO where you're not necessarily doing damage. So again, you're not actively fighting people, and you're kind of like in preparation for a fight. So when most people describe neutral game, which is effectively a fighting game terminology, they mean that you want to always be doing something when there's nothing happening, because you never know if an Awakened Nova or Valkyrie is going to bomb you from off screen. And so just standing around like this unprotected during a node war or a siege is a really, really bad idea. So with that being said, what abilities can we do to establish a good neutral game? Well, first off, the most safe abilities that you can use are of course going to be the ones with super armor. That way, in the event that if any fast rat gets behind you, you're not caught in a forward guard. Now of course there are going to be situations where we're going to be using forward guard as well. That's not to say that you're not going to be using them, but some of the most safest abilities that you can be using are of course going to be Riftstorm, so which is going to be down C. Riftstorm also has a little bit of a linger to it. As you can see, you still have like a little bit of, 0.5, 0.75 second linger. So this ability is very, very good. If you're just not doing anything, it's not really a high value ability, so to speak anyway. So you can just use that. That's super armor. Some other abilities that I like to use when I'm just in neutral game doing nothing, of course, is always going to be Shift L and B. You have a little bit of forward guard right there. It also has a tiny little forward guard linger at the end. It's not really too noticeable, but it can help sometimes. And some of the main abilities that you can just kind of throw out there for free is going to be Ator's Energy and Automagia. So this is going to be down L and B, and then right click for the flow. These two abilities are absolutely amazing for just stalling a neutral game. You pretty much are never going to use these buttons for doing damage. You can in very certain situations, but honestly, this ability is very, very good used defensively, especially along with Automagia. And Automagia is on a very long cooldown at 20 seconds. So if you're just standing around doing nothing, just pop out with the Ator. And finally, guys, I'm just going to bundle these two together. We have our Q block, which is going to be Illusion Barrier. This is also available to us in the Awakening stance. Now, Q block is very, very simple. You press Q, and you block. It's very, very basic. I don't need to explain Q block. You can hold the stance for a while just by pressing Q one time. However, after a little bit, so after about 10 seconds, the Q block is going to dissipate. So I can press Q once, and I don't have to press it again for another 10 seconds. Again, after you press Q, like I explained earlier, you get the 20 DP. And another weird thing that you get is you actually recover 10% of your maximum mana anytime you block a hit with this ability, which is really, really niche. It doesn't really do anything because Mana Potion exists, but in the event that you run out of Mana Potions and you need mana, you can use Illusion Barrier, I guess, to recover mana. And also Spatial Fissure recovers mana too. But other than that, very, very basic. If you need to just block damage and you don't have any ability up for whatever reason, you can just Rift Chain around, Q block. Super duper basic, doesn't really need any more explanation than that. The other final forward guard that we have, guys, is going to be the Tried and True S block. And again, it's as simple as it sounds. You literally just hold S and you have a free block. So in the event that you have no stamina and you want to close a little bit of distance, or create a little bit of distance rather, you can S block instead of Q blocking. Might be a little bit more reliable for you than just standing still and Q block. It's up to you. Generally speaking, you're not going to find yourself in a situation that you have to be S blocking. So, those are the final two forward guards in the kit, guys. It is Q block and S block. Very basic, very brain dead, and use it when you need it. Up next, guys, here is a visual aid of all of Sage's super armors within the kit. Okay guys, up next I'm going to talk a little bit about Sage's super armors, which funnily enough, next up guys, we have Prime Automagia. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, Prime Automagia is functionally a useless ability aside from two main applications. This is also the flow to a Tor's energy, so you can only ever use this ability after using a Tor's energy. It is on a 20-second cooldown, which is kind of wild. Now, this ability not only does no damage, but it basically doesn't really do anything aside from one of two things. So one is the one that I mentioned earlier. It's really good for building your Prime Overdrive stacks to build up your reset faster. And two, it has a really large AoE. So let's say, for example, you're doing, guild leagues or RBF, or you're doing any kind of situation where you think there's going to be a stealth class. This ability has such an AoE that you can just pop it, and I even hit the guy over there, right? So if there's any ninja, Kuno, even an archer in stealth, it's a very good ability to reveal targets out of stealth because it does damage and that will pop them out. It also has an extremely mediocre 50 pain damage every 3 seconds for 18 seconds, so it's like a really weak bleed. Other than that, guys, this is the only main application, again, is to stall with super armor. So you can do a Tor's energy, it's an Automagia. If you need some stamina, it's a really good ability to stall for stamina because it has a very long SA linger. It's very good to build up your overdrive stack. Energy with the healing elixirs. That big. And you can actually pocket this ability. You can pocket part 2 of this ability, which I don't believe is actually even listed anywhere. So you can form shift things above you as well. Now, getting in, like, let's say there's a bunch of recovery sensors here. You're about to burn a fort. You can just toss the... Okay guys, now that we gave an overview of all the abilities, I would like to run through the abilities at CC. All the CCs in our kit very briefly. So to start, we do have our knockdowns. First knockdown is going to be a Tor's Fist, which is F. Second knockdown is going to be Illusion Detonation. Third and final knockdown is going to be Piercing Thorn. Next up we have our floats. Okay guys, now that we gave an overview of all the abilities, I would like to run through the abilities at CC, all the CCs in our kit very briefly. So to start, we do have our knockdowns. First knockdown is going to be a Tor's Fist, which is F. Second knockdown is going to be Illusion Detonation. Third and final knock. knockdown is going to be Piercing Thorn. Next up we have our floats. The first float is going to be Void Gateways. The second float is going to be the ending of Illusion Compression. And an example of this is the standard bread and butter combo, which I guess will be combo 1, which is going to be Void Gateways into a Taurus Mark into the Magnus. Now, this is our best quote-unquote burst combo. If you're in a pinch for time, or let's say there's like a big ball over there and you have very, very limited time to do damage, but you want to do as much of it as possible in a small window, this is going to be the combo. So you're going to pocket Void Gate, Void Gate, Taurus Mark, and Magnus. So again, that is going to be Shift R and B pocketed into down E into Shift Q. Now this combo again is extremely good for burst purposes because it does a lot of damage. They're debuffed from the Taurus Mark and they take a bunch of damage from the Magnus. However, as you can see, once you use Void Gate and a Taurus Mark, they are instantly CC capped. So this ability or this combo gives you just enough time to get a full Magnus off before they get off from the combo. So that being said, the next small combo that we have, guys, and this is a basic ability link rather than a combo, this is going to be the Shift F plus Flow and to the Taurus Fist. This is just a general high damage quick burst combo that you can add into really any string of abilities. You can use it at any time that you want. And so it's very simple. It's just going to be Shift F and hold F until the fist is done. Shift F, Flow, and then the F. Just like that. And it's a very, very simple combo. It does a lot of damage because you're using both parts of the illusion, detonation, and expansion. You are getting in. An example of this is the standard bread and butter combo, which I guess will be combo 1, which is going to be Void Gateways into a Taurus Mark into the Magnus. Now, this is our best quote-unquote burst combo. If you're in a pinch for time, or let's say there's like a big ball over there and you have very, very limited time to do damage, but you want to do as much of it as possible in a small window, this is going to be the combo. So you're going to pocket Void Gate, Void Gate, Taurus Mark, and Magnus. So again, that is going to be Shift R and B pocketed into down E into Shift Q. Now this combo again is extremely good for burst purposes. The prime example of this is the standard bread and butter combo, which I guess will be combo 1, which is going to be Void Gateways into a Taurus Mark into the Magnus. Now this is our best quote-unquote burst combo. If you're in a pinch for time, or let's say there's like a big ball over there and you have very, very limited time to do damage, but you want to do as much of it as possible in a small window, this is going to be the combo. So you're going to pocket Void Gate, Taurus Mark, and Magnus. So again, that is going to be Shift R and B pocketed into down E into Shift Q. Now this combo again is extremely good for burst purposes because it does a lot of damage. They're debuffed from the Taurus Mark and they take a bunch of damage from the Magnus. However, as you can see, once you use Void Gate and the Taurus Mark, they are instantly CC capped. So this ability or this combo gives you just enough time to get the full Magnus off before they get off the combo. So that being said, the next small combo that we have, guys, and this is a basic ability link rather than a combo, this is going to be the Shift F plus Flow and to the Taurus Fist. This is just a general high damage quick burst combo that you can add into. Next up we have our floats. The first float is going to be Void Gateways. The second float is going to be the ending of Illusion Compression. And the final float is going to be Finishing Touch. Next up we have our bounds. The first bound is going to be a Taurus Mark. Next up we have Spatial Collapse. And then finally we have the summon hit of the Realm of Anguish, which is the box.
Ads are now running. The current ads are over.
witches abound. Next up, guys, we have our stuns, to which there is only going to be one, and that is the Azor's Illusion Rabomb. Our Shift X. Next up, we have Stiffs, which are going to be the first part of Illusion Compression and Illusion Expansion. So, part 1 of Compression. And, okay guys, we're getting near to the end of the video, and before we close out, I just want to give you guys some quick cool tips that you may or may not otherwise know. So, a couple things to start. We're going to talk a little bit about mouse moving very briefly. I did mention earlier when I went over. Next tip I have for you guys is going to be raising your camera angle. So, typically this is how most people play their game. They have, they're just walking around, they have their normal camera and whatnot. They're pretty flush with the ground. Now, generally speaking, you don't want your camera to look like this. Like, you want your camera to be more at an angle like that, first of all. That's the first tip. The second tip is that you actually want to raise your camera view by hitting up with the up arrows. So you want to raise it like that. And the reason why this is very, very important is because if you can see, my camera's too low right here, I'm not basically going to hit the target with the crosshair. So by raising the camera up, you actually increase the vantage point, which means that your abilities have a better chance to hit, and it actually increases the range of your abilities. So, it's a little weird to explain, like you'd have to practice it, but if I do a Shift F flow right here, like that's gonna hit, it hits right in front of the guy. But if I raise my camera and I use Shift F flow, this is basically guaranteed to hit. Because the actual projectile, whatever ability you're using, it really heavily depends on this red crosshair. Like, you will hit with a lot more abilities by having your camera raised up. It's really, really weird. I don't know why it works like that, but my impression is just think you're a really, really tall person and you're looking down at something, right? And you have a little bit more of an angle. Alright guys, next tip that I have for y'all is, in my opinion, going to be a little bit of one of my golden rules for Sage. There's a couple golden rules, but one of the big golden rules that I have for Sage is that whenever you take an engagement, I like to think about this thing that I call the 2 rift chain rule. So whenever you're going to engage a ball or a fight, you want to, and this is just in my opinion by the way, but the most optimal way you can position for the fight is by being within 2 rift chains of the fight. So for example, you're going to use 1 rift chain to close the gap, and then the second rift chain is going to be the one that you're going to engage with your ability. And it's very, very hard to just explain it by saying it, you just have to do it in practice. But basically, I have found the most success engaging balls by being within always a 2 rift chain distance. If you're any further away, so for example, if you're within a 3 rift chain distance, so 1, 2, 3, that's a lot more awkward. So in order to utilize Sage's potential to the maximum, you want to be positioning yourself in such a way that you can engage balls within a 2 rift chain distance. So again, 1 rift chain to close the gap, second rift chain is going to be the one that you actually engage with. And this has brought me much, much success in large scale, especially large scale for the most part, because you get into the mindset that you're always close enough that you can do something, but not too close that you're in danger. So always keep in mind the 2 rift chain rule. If you're anywhere further than 2 rift chains, it means that you are typically out of position and you're too far away from the fight. Now, Sage needs to be relatively close to a fight in order to be efficient. If you find yourself having to rift chain all the way over to a fight before you can actually do anything, you just wasted 30% of your stamina, right? So in that situation where you're really, really far away, it's better to just horse flank, which is another advanced technique. You have to go a very, very far distance. You don't want to be rift chaining around to get into position. Sometimes, and especially depending on the terrain, it's going to be better for you to just be on your horse and just go for a horse flank instead. Especially if you have a T10 Pegasus, there are a lot of situations where I've gotten really disgusting horse flanks because you don't have to use your stamina, which is Sage's second life bar. If anything, it's your first life bar, to be honest with you, because if you run out of stamina, you die because you have no protection, you have no nothing. So always keep in mind the rift chain rule and always be conscious of your positioning in large scale and in general. Finally guys, some last basic tips that I have for you in regards to large scale. The big thing about large scale and the thing about Sage is that you always have to remember that you are a flanker class. You are a flanker. So 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, you never ever want to approach a ball from the front. Let's say this is the enemy ball over here and they're about to clash, you know, and just collapse right onto your ball. You are never ever going to be the type of class that's like, oh, there's the ball, alright, I'm going in. You're not doing that ever. The way you want to play this class efficiently and large scale especially is you want to play as a flanker, and being a flanker doesn't even mean that you have to hit somebody specifically from the back all the time. You can hit them from the side, because as you know, the forward guard is a 180 degree of protection. So your forward guard, if you look at my mouse, is going to start from around the side of your character, it's going to arc in front of you, and it's going to end at the other side of your character. So all you have to do is hit somebody at the apex of their forward guard, and you will get a back attack. You don't actually have to be behind people to get a back attack, and you need to keep that in mind. So the fundamental process of how you need to position in Node War is you need to be playing as a flanker slash orbiter, right? So if let's say that this is the enemy ball, right? You know, you have like maybe I'll throw up a diagram on the screen if I'm smart enough, but essentially, let's say, imagine the enemy ball as a circle. You never want to be approaching the circle or the ball from the front. You always want to be approaching it from the side. You want to be approaching it from the side, and you want to be orbiting around the action, around the fight. You want to come from outwards and work inwards. You never just want to dive directly inwards, because then all of a sudden, you're in the middle of the ball, and then you die. Right? You never want to play front to back, because then you're hitting all the frontline classes, you're getting shot by the archers and rangers, and then you just die. But if you play from the side, you can get back attacks for free, because that's the apex of forward guards, so you get back attacks for free, you're still getting back attack damage, and you want to play from behind if you get a juicy flank. You don't want to overcommit to hit people from behind, because if there is an insecure insert range class here, like a ranger, cast, or whatever, just one guy in the back that, you know, maybe got to the ball a little bit slow, you're going to be in some weird forward guard, and then Archer Johnny is going to shoot you in the back, and then you're going to die. So, you do not want to overcommit to hit people from behind. Playing from the side and playing as an orbiter is the #1 way you will find success as a flanker, especially a slow class like Sage. It is super duper important, I cannot stress that enough, and that will bring you guys much success in large scale. Now guys, before I close out the tips and tricks section, I just want to give you guys a little bit more of a nugget of information regarding how Suck Sage actually plays. And now fellas, while Suck Sage most definitely is one of the easiest mechanical classes in the game, there is undoubtedly a lot of skill ceiling, and a lot of that skill ceiling comes from the nuances of playing practically the slowest class in the entire game aside from Suck Nova or Shy. And there are a lot of things that you have to consider with different opportunity cost of when you should go in and how you should go in. Everything is very, very time sensitive, because you don't necessarily have, you know, the crazy ridiculous mobility of the Awakening Draconia. You don't have the speed of a lot of these other classes. You don't have the range of a lot of these other classes. So you have to play according to your strengths, and Sage's biggest strengths are when you are in a very, very good position to just bomb everybody and the enemy doesn't notice you. A lot of Sage's weaknesses are when you have to travel very, very long distances, especially across flat open land nodes, for example. So having very, very good timing and very good positioning on this class are arguably, if not arguably, the most important skill sets that you can learn on this class to be a good player. It doesn't really take a lot to learn how to play Sage mechanically. The combos are very easy, the buttons are very easy, there's not that many buttons to press in the first place. However, there is a lot of skill gap in learning when you can go in and how you can go in. So again, timing and positioning is extremely, extremely important on this class. And the better you get at those two things, the better you will become as a Sage player. It doesn't matter if you're the best mechanical player in the entire universe, and this same concept applies to League of Legends, for example. You don't have to have challenger level mechanics to be a challenger player, but you do need challenger level macro to be a challenger player. And the macro for that in this game, again, is going to be that positioning, that timing, and that level of awareness, you know, having very good map awareness, cooldown awareness, etc., etc. So guys, when you do play this class, always keep in mind the core ethos of how to play Succession Sage, and that is you need to understand that you are playing as a glass mortar. You are very, very slow, you do a lot of damage in the right opportunities, but if you get into a bad position, it doesn't matter how good of a player you are, you will die to some random damage on the screen, and it'll be bad. So yeah, hope that helps you guys out, and thank you for listening to this section. Guys, I just want to thank y'all personally. If you've made it this far into my video, this is going to be the end of the Succession Sage PvP guide. Now, I'd like to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for watching this video, and I do hope that it helps you to become a better Suck Sage. Again, there may or may not have been things that I've missed in the video. If you have any questions, of course, as usual, please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, please share it with a friend, share it around, and, you know, drop a like. And of course, you can always join my Discord and ask me any questions that you have there about PvP, Black Desert, or Sage in general. With that being said, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you for the next video. Bye-bye.
Ads are now running. The current ads are over. Ads are now running. The current ads are over. Ads are now running. The current ads are over. Ads are now running. The current ads are over. Wireless microphone activated. Both microphones muted. Ads are now running. The current ads are over.